Welcome to everyone from all around the world. We're excited to be here with you. We may be in different time zones, but certainly we're excited to be together. So again, welcome to the International Health Commission of the AME Church COVID-19 Town Hall, where today we're going to discuss vaccine information, vaccine distribution, health equity, and social determinants of health. At this time, I'd like to start with a word of prayer. Please bow your heads with me. Most dear gracious and heavenly Father, we honor you, we magnify your holy and divine name. We thank you for how you continue to bless us and bless us with those miracles and special blessings that you send that we see and in those that we do not see. And now as we gather together to share information, we look to you for wisdom and for guidance. And we thank you for this opportunity to share. And we pray that all that we do share provides important information to allow others to make an informed decision for themselves and to be guided as they also add their prayer. We pray this in the name of Jesus, amen and amen. So at this time, I would like to again welcome you, and I would like to introduce our panel that's going to be presenting to you today. We have the Reverend Dr. Miriam Burnett. She's the Medical Director of the International Health Commission of the AME Church. Reverend Dr. Lisa Williamson, First Episcopal District Health Director. Reverend Dr. John DiMondi, the 19th Episcopal District Director. The Reverend Dr. Vida Fuller, Associate Professor, University of Michigan Health Commission Science Advisor. Cynthia Taylor, the Health Commission Chemist and Advisor. Dr. Wida Collins, Health Commission Clinical Advisor. And our chairman is Bishop Harry Seawright, who will bring greetings to you just a little bit later. I would like to make this disclaimer on behalf of the International Health Commission of the AME Church. The opinions, responses, and information shared by the professionals and the International Health Commission today and during any informational webinar do not replace individuals talking to your medical provider. We understand some individuals may not have a medical provider or personal doctor. Therefore, if you have questions, please discuss your personal questions with the facility personnel administering the vaccinations before you receive a vaccination to assist you in making an informed personal decision. The goal of our webinars is to provide individuals information to allow you to make informed personal decisions regarding all topics presented by the International Health Commission of the AME Church. So let's get started, because again, we want to inform you so that you will be able to again make that personal informed decision for yourself. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with questions that I am going to be giving to our panel, and we'll do that for about an hour. And then the last 30 minutes, we are going to check our chat box for questions that will come directly from you. So with the first question here that I have, it is, what do we know about vaccines and the variants? Let's start with Dr. Collins, then Dr. Burnett, and then Dr. Williamson.
Your question is, what do we know about the vaccines and the variants of the vaccine? And some of this I am going to defer to Dr. Fuller when she joins us. What we know about coronavirus is that it is aggressive, it is contagious, and certainly can kill you. Any virus has the opportunity to mutate, and what we're seeing with those variants are the mutations of the virus and different strains. What we know about vaccines is that overall vaccines have helped us with healthcare and pandemics in the past. Many of us have had the flu vaccines, your measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, and several vaccines through the years. Certainly at this time, we don't have all the answers for the vaccine, but what we do know and what we do see is that the vaccine gives us a greater opportunity for safety, for the potential of having decreased symptoms and decreased transmission of the disease.
Thank you so much, Dr. Burnett. You're muted, Dr. Burnett.
Potential of having.
I just realized I had myself on mute.
Yes.
Dr. Fuller, can you hear us?
I can, yes.
All right, why don't you rephrase that question for Dr. Fuller?
Okay, Dr. Fuller, here's the question that we are answering. Our first question, actually, and welcome so much. What do we know about the vaccines and the variants?
First of all, yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, so we know that the COVID-19 messenger RNA vaccines that are currently under emergency use authorization contain only the messenger RNA for the viruses that were circulating most of last year. The variants that have arisen out of the Great Britain and out of the South Africa have mutations in the spike protein. It looks like those mutations make the virus more easily to transmit. And at the moment, the testing showed that the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are effective against the UK virus variant, and also mostly effective, not quite as strong against the South Africa one. But because these viruses change so quickly, or can change, the best thing would be to shut down virus replication by getting people vaccinated or getting the virus in control so that it doesn't keep moving. So currently the vaccines that we have do work against the strains that we have, but the chances of that changing get greater the more we get more opportunity for the virus to mutate. So right now we can get these vaccines and they can be safe, particularly the Moderna and Pfizer. I understand that others that are out there may not protect, but we don't have approval to use those in the US anyway. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much. So Dr. Burnett, how about this one? What are the preventive measures that need to remain in place? You're muted, Dr. Burnett.
That's a relatively easy question to answer. I think one of the things that we need to also make sure we're dealing with is, for some reason, I'm getting feedback. Okay, still there. Huh.
We can hear you okay, even if you were.
Okay, all right, great, wonderful. One of the things that we need to make sure is we're still wearing masks, and you will find that many of the information now that's going out is saying we need to wear double mask. We need to wear the disposable mask with a cloth mask on top of it to give us the protection that is near that what you would get with an N95 mask, which is what we're using in the healthcare profession settings. In addition to that, we still need to maintain our physical distancing, 6 feet or more. We need to maintain our hand washing, 20 seconds of singing Praise God from whom all blessings flow, or the happy birthday song through twice. All of those things that we were doing before, we need to maintain. Masks, distance, hand washing are essential. Because we are also global, let me double back to what Dr. Fuller was talking about in terms of the vaccine and what is available and what is not available. There are multiple sets of vaccines that are available around the world that have EUAs, emergency use authorizations, beyond just the Moderna and Pfizer. And so we need, and it's country by country. So we need, you can go to the WHO website, or you can go to your own country's public health department, find out what is available, because it is country to country determines your availability.
Thank you so much, Dr. Burnett. Dr. Williamson, you can add to that, but also can you share with us what goes into making an informed decision?
The first thing about making an informed decision is that when you meet with your medical provider, and if you do not have a medical provider, the individuals that are administering the vaccines, there are some questions that you really should ask prior to making that decision. Definitely your medical provider and you should discuss the status of your current health. They should discuss risk factors with you to the vaccines. They should discuss side effects of the vaccines in relation to the first dose and then the second dose. They should also be giving you the most up-to-date information about what category you are in, because we do know that when we come to vaccine distributions, there are different levels of categories that are able to receive the vaccine. So these are some of the topics that you will need to discuss and understand in relation what you need to do prior to taking the vaccine, what you may need to do after taking the vaccine. All of this information is relevant so that you can come to the best decision. And this is something that beyond vaccination extends to your healthcare in general. When making any healthcare decisions, you should have all the information going in that you need. Therefore, there should be a discussion between you and your medical provider, or there should be a discussion with the personnel that may be administering the vaccines before you take the vaccines.
Thank you so much. The next question, how do we analyze a risk for taking the vaccine, as well as what are the common side effects for the vaccines? We'll start with Dr. Fuller.
So let me deal with the side effects first. Fortunately, we're happy to report that with the rollout of the vaccines, or the messenger RNA vaccines, the Pfizer and Moderna here in the USA, so far the side effects are what were seen in the clinical trials. And so that's very comforting to me, that as we get into a wider range of people, we don't see more or different adverse effects. And so what are those? And they range from some people getting nothing in the first injection to more serious or more severe things like body aches and fevers. Some people get a sore arm at the injection. I know that there are people whose arm has been so sore it's been hard to move it, or painful to move it, but that only lasts for 2 to 3 days. That's because your body is responding, your immune system is responding to the foreign item, the messenger RNA that was put in that made spike protein. The symptoms only last for 2 to 3 days at the most. There can be more symptom side effects at the second injection, at the booster, than at the first. So my advice is that when you get your second shot, your second injection, plan the next day to have a much milder schedule. If you can stay home, or if you can take a sick day from home if you're working out, or plan very little on that next day, just in case you have a headache or body aches or chills or fevers. These are not the disease. This is the body's immune response to seeing this foreign item again, this messenger RNA. That means things are working as they should. That means your protection is rising. And then what was the first part of that question, Reverend Mitchum?
How do we determine risk that may be to us personally?
Yes, and I'm going to ask my clinical colleagues to help with this, but from what I am understanding, people who have had reactions or responses to other immunizations, like if you get a flu shot and you get a lot of swelling, or you get allergic reaction, an anaphylactic reaction, those are the people who should not be getting this vaccine unless they have consulted with their physician and are taking with them to the site of immunization the EpiPens and whatever else they need to deal with that. To my understanding, and this was confirmed yesterday by my colleagues, that even women who may be pregnant or even lactating, even people who are have had COVID-19 after a certain phase of time, you should still get a vaccine because the vaccine boosts your immune system to protect you better against the virus infection than the natural immunity does. So those are the things I know. There's nobody that we know of, unless there are specific health regions, and I'll ask my clinical colleagues to comment on what are those specific health reasons.
Dr. Burnett, would you like to add? Should we be concerned about allergies?
Yes. What is on the being said at this point by CDC, WHO, and others is for both the Pfizer and Moderna. Right now, the only allergies to be overly concerned with that may cause you a contraindication are allergies to components of the virus itself, PEG, polysorbate, that kind of thing. Those of us, and I'm in that category, who have allergies to food, and I have a severe allergy to nuts, are still able to get the vaccine, either one of them. I yesterday got my second Moderna vaccine. I did do, as Dr. Fuller said, took my EpiPen with me, but it stayed in my bag. I had no need to use it. And I think what's also important at this point in the conversation is we can, I know one of the questions we're going to be talking about later is pre-medication, but just because we're talking about allergies now, there is no need to pre-medicate with Benadryl or other allergy medications at this point, unless you are instructed to do so by your primary care physician. Dr.
Williamson, how about for pediatrics, for children?
Well, currently, to date with the coronavirus, there's been over more than 2 million pediatric cases, and out of those, we've had 200 deaths. We do know that the Pfizer vaccine right now is the only one authorized starting at age 16, and Moderna is starting at age 18. Both Pfizer and Moderna have started their pediatric trials. Pfizer has started with the age group of 12 to 17, 12 to 15, and Moderna has started with 12 to 17. Basically, how it works with children, it's called an age de-escalation. So they start in the younger age groups, and what they do is they try to monitor the dosing. The dosing for adults and for children may end up being different. Both of them have started their trials, but have yet to really determine when it would be made available for the pediatric population. Their hope is that by the merging of the new school year, but as I said, everything in relation to the pediatric population has just started.
So much. There's a question. What about if you're allergic to penicillin? Anybody want to address that? Dr. Collins, thank you.
Hi. So the vaccine does not contain penicillin. So that in and of itself takes that concern away. However, I always tell people you don't know if you are allergic. And by allergic, we're looking at anaphylaxis, meaning your throat is closing, you can't breathe. You can have a rash, but a rash in and of itself is not something to stop you from getting an injection. But when we're looking at penicillin, and as what was said before, with any medication, if you're allergic or vaccine, it's the components, having known allergies to those components make it contraindicated for you to have. We know that in the vaccine, there is no penicillin because we're treating a virus, and penicillin is an antibiotic which only treats bacteria. You don't use antibiotics to treat viruses. So again, if there are concerns that you have had anaphylactic reactions or concerns of severe allergic reactions, then we want you to speak with your primary care physician regarding obtaining the vaccine. And also, if you're concerned that you may have a severe reaction, and everyone after the vaccine is monitored. If you have a history of having an anaphylactic reaction, then you're monitored after the vaccine for a longer period of time. But certainly if that is a large concern, then I would recommend, one, that you speak with your primary care physician regarding your allergies and what you're specifically allergic to. The second thing would be to try to receive your vaccine at a location that would be able to rapidly assist you, a pharmacy. They will have EpiPens or an epinephrine, or if they're giving it out at a hospital or a clinic, and somewhere where they can assist you if that occurs. All of us are at risk for having an anaphylactic reaction to new medications and new vaccines because we've never had it before, so we don't know that we may be allergic. But certainly if that is a concern, speak with your primary care physician and then make a choice about where would be the best place for you to receive the vaccine.
So Dr. Collins, I just want to follow up. There's a question here. What happens when someone goes to the hospital?
What happens when someone goes to the hospital when they are positive or have symptoms?
When they've tested positive COVID-19, whatever you experience with the experience of those you've seen who are in the hospital.
So what generally happens when you have symptoms and you go present to the emergency room, you're evaluated by the emergency room physician. And COVID testing is performed. Generally, you will have a chest x-ray. Of course, we'll monitor your heart and get some labs. If it is determined that you need to be admitted to the hospital with COVID-19, then the ER physician will call a hospitalist. A hospitalist physician is someone who only cares for patients within the hospital. They will also check with the house supervisor to make sure there's a bed, because also we have to make sure there's room for you. The other thing that is looked at is, depending on how ill you are, if that facility is able to provide the services that you need. If not, then you will need to be transferred to another facility. Once you're in the hospital, you know, we're going to make sure three main things: airway, breathing, circulation. We want to make sure that you have an airway, that you're breathing, and that your blood is circulating. And after that is maintained, we go from there. What you hear and see are about people who are being put on ventilators. And that occurs if you are unable to maintain your oxygen level after we've tried putting you on a nasal cannula, the little things in your nose, or a mask or BiPAP, that you need mechanical ventilation. And that's intubation. It's not TV. We're going to take an apparatus and slide it with the blade to the back of your throat, lift up your tongue, visualize your vocal cords, take a tube and slide in between the vocal cords to just above where there's the bifurcation of the lungs to ventilate your system. Understand that this is something that is trying to take over your body. So it's not just respiratory. It starts messing with your heart. It starts causing clots. We're going to give you anticoagulants, steroids, antivirals. And we're also going to work on your kidneys, because what we don't talk about a lot is that coronavirus shuts a lot of people's kidneys down. And those are persons who have never had any renal problems. They end up on dialysis. So it tries to suffocate you and cause multi-system organ failure. So there are multiple things going on at one time very rapidly in a cascading event. And so what we're trying to do is stop that cascade. So the best way to do that is prevention, avoiding the agent, as we've talked about, by continuing to wear a mask, wash your hands, social distancing, and not letting up on those things, actually becoming more aggressive about it.
Thank you so much. Are there any contradictions to getting vaccinated, Dr. Fuller? Any contraindications?
I'm going to bat that to my clinical colleagues.
Dr. Burnett?
The contraindications are things that we've already talked about. An allergy to a component of the vaccine itself, but beyond that, you would really, and this is where we really have to hone in on, you have to talk to someone who knows your personal situation, whether it be your personal health situation or your environmental situation. But as a general rule, the only reason to not get a vaccine right now is an allergy, an anaphylactic allergy, an allergy that'll stop you from breathing and your heart from pumping because you have a known allergy to a component of the virus, of the vaccine.
Thank you. We've heard people ask questions, and Dr. Burnett, we'll start with you. What about the Tuskegee syphilis study? How can we trust these vaccines?
One of the things that we have to recognize is there's a myth and a misnomer that the syphilis was actually given to the participants in this study. That is very far from the truth. What happened was a withholding of treatment. There is no withholding of treatment happening now. There have been multiple studies. We have our own Dr. Fuller sat on, for the US, on the FDA advisory board for whether or not the vaccine should have its EUA. We have multiple people, multiple persons who are involved in this process now, and there are all kinds of protective mechanisms that are in place. The U.S. as well as WHO and other country components have major gatekeeping mechanisms to prevent any untoward or bypassing of the system. The other thing is this, and I'm going to let Dr. Fuller speak to this. This technology is not new technology. It was, don't look at the term warp speed and think that it just developed. This technology has been around for many years. And at that point, I'm going to toss it back to Dr. Fuller because she's the scientist.
All right, thank you. Yes, so first of all, the only people that shouldn't get this are the people we've already talked about. And in terms of Tuskegee, that is something that happened in the past, and we should know about it. But we can't live in the past. We have to look forward. We have to live now. We have to be where we are. The vaccines that we have that are approved now. And let me just back up. There are three ways vaccines can work. They can either have the live agent, the virus or the bacteria. They can have the inactivated agent, the virus or the bacteria that's been not able to reproduce because of X-ray or something else. And then we can have a subunit of the vaccine. So let me just explain with the messenger RNA vaccines, we don't have the whole virus. So if my fist is the virus, we're not putting in the whole virus like we do with influenza. With influenza, it's inactivated. With the COVID-19 viruses, we're putting in just the thumb, and that's the spike protein that attaches the virus to the cells. We're not even putting in the protein. We're putting in the messenger code that actually gets into our cells and allows our cells to produce this viral protein, and that's all that's there. So that makes these vaccines very clean in a sense. They're not putting a lot of things into our body. that messenger RNA only survives a few hours in our bodies before it's taken up into the cells, and then it's gone. So it's safe in that sense. The other piece about how these were created, this is not something that happened in the last year. There were people who've been working on messenger RNA technology since the mid-2000s for other things, and they just never got as far as this because the priority wasn't as high, and vaccine development is expensive. So what happened is that one group, NIH, and another group, Moderna, and another group, biotech, and another group, and other scientists from around the world actually took their pieces of the puzzle. You can think of it as a patchwork quilt where people had different patches they were working on or different sections. They put them together in terms of sharing technology and work together to test, to develop what would be the best immunogen, the spike to put in, how much to put in, how to do this in a fat lipid, a little drop of fat that the messenger RNA is in, such that it can get into our bodies, get taken up by our cells, and then present that spike to elicit responses from our body that will protect us against the real virus. So this was not developed in the last year. It was the pieces were put together because of being in the midst of a global pandemic that shut down the whole world. And by the way, COVID didn't just happen. It evolved from an animal into humans. And what I like to say is, because we are a faith-based group, is God didn't send it. God allowed it to evolve in one of the natural processes by which we actually get virus and bacteria change. So by allowing this to happen, the whole world was set down for a bit to be still. And in that time, because we're in an emergency, scientists came together to put together what was known in various places and to apply it to a common problem. And so two companies did this very well and went through the normal clinical process of testing anything in humans, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, large studies, thousands, 44,000 in the Pfizer, 30,000 in the Moderna, to make sure that, one, did they stop disease and infection? They stop disease. We don't know if they stop infection. And were they safe? We know that for short term, there are side effects. Those are listed. You will be given those if you get a vaccine, when you get it. And we don't know what the long-term effects are, because these have not been in people's bodies for 3 years. But that's because we're in an emergency situation. So people came together and applied what they knew to get to vaccines that, fortunately, in the scientific world, proved to be highly effective. And we should be really glad about that.
Thank you, Dr. Fuller. We're going to go back to Dr. Burnett, who's going to show us information about contraindications.
One of the things that I neglected to present to you is all of the contraindications that are possible, and as well as when to defer and not defer getting a vaccination. To defer a vaccination, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Great, wonderful. So to defer a vaccine, one would need to make sure that they have completely recovered from the illness, as well as, and it's an and, not an or, met all of the criteria to discontinue isolation. The other reason to defer is to ensure that the monoclonal antibodies or convalescent plasma that was received as a part of the COVID-19 treatment, if received, those persons are to wait 90 days. It is because that is how long we believe the immunity lasts, the natural immunity that is caused by these antibodies and the convalescent plasma. And so there is no need to get a vaccine for 90 days. In terms of the contraindications, I'm just highlighting the fact of the PEG. There are some terms that I want you to know. Polyethylene glycol, polysorbate are two names that one should know. In addition to that, those who are, there's statements about, well, how long do you quarantine? Do you quarantine? do I have to quarantine still? If someone has been fully vaccinated and it's 2 weeks beyond for Pfizer and Moderna, the second dose, or 2 weeks beyond receiving the one dose, if the Johnson & Johnson is the one that is being provided to you, again, depending on where you are around the world. Those people and are within 3 months of having received the last dose and remain asymptomatic. Those people may not have to quarantine. Again, it is state to state, country to country specific, but these are the general guidelines that have been agreed to by CDC and WHO. Here are some guidelines around contraindications to vaccine, when to have a precaution, and when to proceed. You will find that the precautions are any allergic reaction to any other vaccine or injectable, which is where that conversation with penicillin came from. And the other, you may go ahead and proceed as if you have allergies to oral medications that do not have those components, or family history of allergies, or history of food, pet, insect, that kind of allergy. I will tell you, yes, this 30-minute observation period has been enforced. I had to sit for 30 minutes. Everybody else was ready to go after 15. But because I have a food allergy, 30 minutes, I sat and waited with EMS, waiting to make sure I was not going to have a reaction. Back to
Thank you so much. So, Dr. Williamson, we've heard about Moderna and the Pfizer. So, can you? And now they're going to be presenting Johnson & Johnson for approval. Can you tell us the difference between the three?
Well, the biggest difference between Johnson & Johnson and Moderna and Pfizer is that Moderna and Pfizer are 2 doses. Pfizer is 21 days apart. Moderna is 28 days apart. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a 1-dose vaccine. The 1 dose is really the way it is being put together. What it is they are using a common adenovirus as a vector to get the to get into your system, and that 1 dose, that vector, is going to be able to replicate. The difference is that with Moderna and Pfizer, they need the 2 doses to replicate, to give you that efficacy, be it anywhere up to 95%. But the difference with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is that it is 1 dose because they're using that virus as a vector. And I can yield to Dr. Fuller if she wants to expand upon any other differences.
Thank you. I think you've really covered the major ones. Just know that right now, Johnson & Johnson is not approved or authorized yet. Those studies, or that review, comes up the end of this month, and there probably will not be enough vaccine until probably April or March to start distributing that. So don't wait to get that one if you are eligible for something else. It will take a while. And the only other thing is, because we are global, as I was reminded as I was coming from something in Michigan, is that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine does not seem to do a very good job. I believe it was that one, or maybe it was the AstraZeneca. I may be getting confused, against the South Africa strain. So those of you who are on the continent, be sure that you get a vaccine that works against what may be occurring in your community. And the other thing I want to say while I have an opportunity is that once I understood that the side effects that we're seeing in people being rolled out are the same as were in the study, and then importantly, as we were realizing there are variants arising in various places around the world, that to me made it more urgent to get the message out that unless there's some really strong reason not to, that most of us should go ahead and get one of the vaccines that are available. And the reason for that is that the disease that we are protected against by the vaccine is so much worse than anything we know about these vaccines. Yes, there's stuff we don't know. Long term, we don't know. But for me, it was an act of faith to say, God, I want to be part of the solution to this pandemic now. And if I can get a vaccine that will protect me from disease and hopefully shut down the spread of this virus, then that's a good thing. I want to show a slide that shows you what one of our colleagues was talking about earlier in terms of what vaccines, let's see. Do you see that? Yes?
Not yet.
You don't see it? Okay. All right, let me do it another way. So what we were talking about in terms of now,
Nope.
I'm not going to worry about it, then I won't use our time. But what I was trying to show you are the wide range of issues that happen with COVID disease. As was mentioned, people get brain damage, strokes from blood clots. There's heart attacks because the virus itself induces changes in the body that we don't understand molecularly or pathogenicity of how it happens. People often end up on dialysis because their kidneys are affected, and it's all partly because the air exchange in the lungs are stopped because of the mucus that builds up in response to the virus replicating in the lungs. People get immune system defects. They get gastrointestinal issues. These are all very, very serious issues with the body from COVID-19. And so what we know about the virus is that it can lead to very serious illness. And even for those people who don't get serious illness, they get mild illness or moderate illness at home. There's something called the long haulers, where people still end up with fevers and joint pains, brain fog, difficulty. Athletes who are used to working out, who get a mild or moderate form of COVID-19, can barely walk upstairs for months after they get it. So what am I saying? I'm saying that the dangers of the COVID-19 disease are greater than the vaccine that we know of. And there are people circulating videos that say, oh, only 99% of people don't get serious COVID. Well, if that were true, then we wouldn't see all these people in the hospitals that we see. And even if it is 2% of people that get serious COVID, that's 2% too much. You all know folks who have died from COVID-19, and that's what the vaccines help prevent. So if we can do something, even if it requires a bit of step on faith for the few unknowns, does it block infection, and how long does the immunity last, and what are the long-term effects? Those are three. If we step out on faith about those things, we can help bring this pandemic under control by, one, stopping the deaths, and two, not overwhelming our hospitals, and three, adding vaccines to the whole tool of masking, distancing, etc., that we have to stop this pandemic. We have to work together to do that.
Reverend Mitchell, let me add something just a second. On January 25th, Moderna announced that it is starting to do trials around booster, as well as looking specifically at the variants. The Johnson & Johnson product has looked at the South African variant and said it's only 57% effective. But the Moderna is more effective on the UK variant than it is on the South African variant. The bottom line is there are multiple studies now going on looking at the variants and whether or not a booster or another type of vaccine needs to occur worldwide. And depending on what variant is more prevalent will also determine what needs to be done in that country. So it is key and important, and I'm going to keep harping on this, to look at the WHO websites, to look at your public health sites in your specific countries, because that data is the one that is most important to you. It does not matter what is happening in the Caribbean or in England or in South Africa, if you're in the United States, in terms of effectiveness, and vice versa. Just keep moving that pin around, and you have to make sure that where you are or where you plan to travel is going to be covered.
And I'm just quickly add to that. We oftentimes want somebody to tell us what to do. Here's a case where you're going to have to do some study or some research or some reading or some investigating. Ask somebody, find for yourself, because you're in different places, you have different bodies, your conditions may be different, but you need to know for yourself and research for yourself, or have trusted people that you get advice from about this, because the circumstances may vary, as was just said, in the US versus South Africa versus India versus Great Britain. You have to be proactive about this.
Thank you so much. And with you sharing about the different vaccines and their effectiveness around the world, there is a question. So if someone is locally or in the United States and they have a choice between Pfizer or Moderna, what should they do?
I think Dr. Fuller already said that. Get the one that you can get.
Yeah, I don't think most places are going to give you a choice, but let me just explain. Oh, Cynthia, go ahead. Sister Taylor, Reverend Taylor.
I was just going to say that EUA, which is the emergency use authorization that the FDA puts out, is the same for Moderna and Pfizer. The difference, the major difference between Moderna and Pfizer is the way it's stored.
That is absolutely true. And so what I was going to add is that for those of you who live in areas or work in a medical center or whatever, you'll probably have access to Pfizer, because the lower temperature that's required to keep it safe are found in hospitals and places like that. For those that are getting vaccinated at pharmacies or community centers, you'll probably have access to Moderna, because the storage is not as low. And in addition, Moderna comes in 100 vial, 100 dose groups, versus Pfizer comes in like close to 900, almost 1,000 in per bunch. So, you know, if you're in an area where you might be in a clinic that, or going to a clinic or a grocery store, wherever it is, a pharmacy that doesn't have 1,000 people to immunize, then you're not going to get Pfizer, you're going to get Moderna. And states are assigned to distribute the limited amount of vaccine right now the best they can to meet the need. So that's why I don't think you're going to have a choice. If you do, in my opinion, it's, what do they say, 6 of one and half a dozen of the other? It really doesn't matter.
Okay.
I want to chime in. I think from a global level too, because we know globally that there are many countries that deal with refrigeration issues. And, you know, in thinking about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, when, you know, if it is given its emergency use authorization, they have even less restrictions on refrigeration. So when we're thinking globally, you know, these are some of the options. Johnson & Johnson right now globally would probably better meet those refrigeration challenges.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williamson. So following up with a question that's sort of related to that, does the vaccine give you COVID-19? And if it doesn't, how do I understand the fact that they say that I could still be infected with COVID-19 after receiving the vaccination?
No, it absolutely does not give you the COVID virus. It does not give you COVID. We know there's history in immunization such as MMR where we're actually giving you the live virus, but that is not the case with COVID-19 vaccine. Your body will mount an immune response. So what we tell people is after you receive a vaccine, you do not become COVID-19 positive. You become antibody positive. So you're not being infected with the virus, right? They're using the genetic materials, and that is what your body is exactly as as Dr. Fuller just did, the spike protein. So no, you are not being given the illness, the virus. And for those going back to the history with the syphilis experiment, that is why we made that distinction to say that people were not given syphilis, they were not vaccinated with syphilis. So a lot of those myths in our community, no, you are not. It is not alive, what we considered virus.
Thank you so much for that.
The second part of that question was real important. So
What was the second part, Natalie? Do you want to repeat the second part?
Can we be infected after receiving the COVID-19 vaccination? Can you help us understand when we hear that we possibly could still be infected by COVID-19?
Yes, you can be reinfected, and that's what the variants. You can be infected with one of the variants, because you got to remember the vaccines are not preventing, blocking that we know now infection. It is preventing the severity of the illness. So yes, you can get the vaccine and be infected again, and especially if we're dealing with one of the new variants that are out there.
Add to that, it takes time for you to build the antibodies and the immunity and to be able to fight off even the severe infection. And it can be up to 6 weeks after receiving, whether if it's Johnson & Johnson, the 1 dose, or if it's Moderna and Pfizer, the 2 doses. There is some mild immunity built up between the first and the second dose, but to say that you are immune to what that vaccine is supposed to cover in terms of severity of illness, it takes your body time to do that. It does not, I've got my vaccine and so I'm good to go and I can run out there and do what I want to do. No.
And I just want to follow up on that and say, some people have asked if I get the first vaccine and I can't get there to get the second one in 21 days if it's Pfizer, or 28 days if it's Moderna, what do I do? The answer is you get there whenever you can get there. It's better to get both doses, even if it isn't the time frame that that the clinical trials did. The first dose will get you somewhere around 40 to 60% protection. The second dose boosts that up to protect up to the 95% that we've heard about so much. So it's important, if it's a 2-dose vaccine, to get both. And don't mix them. And I don't think they'll let you. If you got Pfizer the first time, you get Pfizer the second time. You got Moderna the first time, you get Moderna the second time. So it's important to get both boosts, and know, as I think was heard, but it's so necessary to understand, you must continue to wear masks, social distance, wash hands, do all the preventions before, because the vaccines are preventing disease and symptoms. They'll keep you out of the hospital. They'll keep you from headaches and things. But the studies have not yet shown that there's not any virus in your nasal passages that you can breathe out to others. So that does not mean you are not contagious to other people, particularly people in your family who may not have been vaccinated yet, or who are particularly vulnerable. So remember, that's really critical.
So with you saying that, Cynthia, we are talking to a faith-based community. Everybody's waiting to get back to church. We don't know when that might happen. Some may have already gone back to church. So what would you share with us as a chemist that we still have to keep in mind, even with these vaccinations?
So none of the rules have changed. Even with the vaccinations, none of the rules have changed. We need to be vigilant in our cleaning. We need to be vigilant in our hand washing, like Reverend Dr. Burnett said, 20 seconds. Sing the happy birthday song, sing praise God from whom all blessings flow. We need to make sure all surfaces are kept clean. We do not need to be going room to room. We need to verify the ventilation system in our buildings. Saying you're going to go in the fellowship hall because you want to pack some things to do outreach is not good. If you have one ventilation system through the whole church, if you can't go in the sanctuary, you can't go in the fellowship hall. You can't go in your office to have a meeting. because that ventilation system is recirculating and you are recirculating COVID. And you need to, at least at a minimum, be 6 feet apart. If you are singing, if you are praise dancing, if you are preaching, if you are raising your voice, you need to be 20 feet apart. 20 feet. If you're playing a musical instrument, 20 feet apart. Look at that microphone you're using. You can't wipe the top of the microphone and pass it to the next person. That microphone has several components which needs to be cleaned and sterilized. You each need to have your own. They need to be cleaned and sterilized after each use. You don't need to be sharing them. You don't need to be in a shared space. Conventions. We as churchgoers, we love our conventions. We love our big services. We cannot have them. A hotel that tells you they haven't had an outbreak is a hotel that hasn't checked. If that hotel uses a communal ventilation system, that means you going in a room and closing the door is not protecting you at all. That ventilation system is going through every bedroom, every conference room, every meeting room, every cafeteria room. It's going through the whole building. You have to know this for yourself. The best protection we have is to stay home. When we can't stay home, to make sure we are protecting ourselves, we should have wipes with us at all times. We need to be masked or double masked. We need to wear our mask correctly. We need to wipe down surfaces like our car doors. We need to wipe down doorknobs when we do go in buildings. We need to be vigilant because we're not just protecting ourselves, we're also protecting others.
Another question would be, when you talk about being in the church, for those who may be in the church, our pews are close together. Are you talking about 6 feet to the left of us, 6 feet to the right of us, 6 feet behind us? What would be our distance between sitting in the pews or chairs?
6 feet in every direction. And that's if all you're going to do is go there and sit. If you're going to sing, you need to be 20 feet apart in every direction. North, east, south, and west. Add in northeast, northwest. You need to be 20 feet apart in every direction, because when you sing, you extrapolate your voice, which means those aerosols that you cannot see are expounded at a greater level. You also need to think about the fact that pews and altars are wood. Wood surfaces, you just can't put a disinfectant wipe on because of the porousness of the wood. They have to be wiped at a different level. You can't have Sunday school in a room and then 10 minutes later, have morning service. That room has to be sanitized. It has to be cleaned thoroughly and completely. So you need to think about those things. Metal surfaces, marble surfaces, kitchen surfaces, you can wipe down with a disinfectant wipe. When you're talking about wood, you're talking about a porous surface that will ingrain those particles. And you have to clean wood a different way. And you can't clean wood but so many times a day, or you will break down the wood itself. So all of those things need to be thought about before you think about going into the church. We all miss being in the church, but the church is just a building and we are the church. And the more we recognize that, the better we will be equipped to actually do what we need to do. Going inside that building at this point, you should realize that's not as important as you thought it was. What's important is the outreach, which can continue whether you're doing it from home or doing it from inside that square building.
Thank you so much. And along with that, in our faith-based community, I want to encourage you as a registered dietitian and nutritionist, when we're thinking about, of course, we've heard about wearing the mask, physical distancing, washing your hands, but we want to have a positive immune response. So we're encouraging you to eat healthy food while you're at home. Make sure you have plenty of plant-based foods, colorful foods. Every time you eat a meal, make sure it's colorful so that you will be making sure that your body is getting the antioxidants and getting those components, which are called phytonutrients or plant nutrients, only found in foods that grow from the ground, so that your body is getting those items to help to boost your immune system. Healthy food choices, helps you to do that. Also, you want to make sure that you are hydrated. Um, and when we talk about hydration, we want to focus on water and what you can do with water, add in fruits and vegetables and basil and other herbs and spices. You might not ever thought about that, but you can add it to your water to give it flavor, but you want to drink more water to stay hydrated. That's important to boost your immune system. Restorative sleep, getting enough sleep at night. I know at this time it's been hard for many of us to get sleep, but find ways that you can, before it's time to go to bed, start to turn off all those electronics. Begin to read some scripture, put on some praise music, whatever it takes so that you can get that 7 to 9 hours of rest is important to boosting your immune system. Then daily fitness. And we're not saying that you have to go out and have a gym membership. Walking every day. You can walk in your house. You can walk in place while you're watching something on television. Even when you're on some of your Zoom meetings or your internet meetings that you're having, make sure you stand up after a while, because sitting down for too long, as we know, can be just as bad as smoking. And with mentioning smoking, you want to stop smoking. Find a smoking cessation program that you can get into, because as we heard earlier, COVID-19, its aim is to suffocate us, and you want healthy lungs during this time. And certainly remember this, while we are physically distant, we are socially together right now. So continue to be connected with your friends and family through social media, through calling them on the phone, but also with you being physically distant. It's helping to give time as you do the other steps, the healthy food, the hydration, the fitness every day, not smoking. And of course, remember this, alcohol use. They've said that alcohol use has increased during COVID-19. Alcohol use, you want to limit that. You want to avoid that, because alcohol does not contribute to hydration. When we talk about hydration, we just want basically water that you can flavor, and you don't want a lot of sweet, tutti frutti beverages, as I sometimes call them. So putting all that together, as well as you making your decision about the vaccine, wearing that mask, washing your hands, and physical distancing is important. Now we're getting down to the hour. There's a few more questions that I'm going to be reading, but we want you to continue to put in your questions in the chat box in the area that you have, and we will try to entertain as many of those questions in our last 30 minutes. But while we're waiting to see more of your questions, here's a question that I have. We'll start with Dr. Collins. Do you think that it's a good idea for us to pre-medicate prior to getting the vaccine?
Hi, it's recommended that we don't pre-medicate when getting the vaccine. Unless you have particular allergies, as Dr. Burnett said earlier, that you speak with your primary care doctor about. But I know many people are saying, oh, I think you should take Tylenol or Motrin or some type of analgesic prior to receiving the vaccine. That is not recommended. We do not recommend that you do it. We want you to be able to receive the vaccine and that your body be able to mount a response.
And Dr. Williamson, what should we, and then Dr. Fuller too, Dr. Williamson, Dr. Fuller, what should we do after you've taken the vaccine?
Some of the best things to do, and it's also going to be dependent on if you have a local reaction site, swelling at the site of the vaccine, you can use ice. I think we stated earlier that when you prepare to take the vaccine, make sure you don't have anything major planned. Give your body time to rest. It has been noted with those of us who have gotten the second dose that the second dose will present with a little bit probably more fatigue. So you have to rest, you have to hydrate. Something I do want to bring to your attention, and I know we might get to it, everybody who takes a vaccine should receive what's called the ability to sign up with the vaccine adverse event reporting system. And this is where you register, and this is a great way for us to continue with the research. So sometime if you pre-medicate, you might block if you have a fever after the vaccine, and that is something we need to know. So that's why we say don't try to pre-medicate. I know with being a pediatrician, parents would say, can I give the kid the Tylenol before I bring them in for the shots? And it's like, no, don't do that. But because if you are having want to report some of those adverse reactions, you know, allow your natural immunity response to kick in. And, you know, if you do have something to report, you report it, you know, and then we can get more information. But sometimes rest, hydration, if you have a little swelling, ice to the area, that is really all you need to really do after the vaccine. But definitely, if you have what is considered an adverse event, you need to register and report it.
Just to follow up on that, everyone should be given the information to register for the CDC. It's called VAERS, VAERS, when you get the vaccine. It's so important to take your smartphone or whatever you have to connect to that, at least in the US, such that you are now connected. You'll get a text message every day to say, how are you doing? What are your symptoms? And then there's an opportunity, if you have something really severe, to tell them about it so you can get some attention. So that's very critical to do. I just want to say goodbye to the Michigan Lay Organization who joined us from the 4th District. Thank you for changing your program to be here with us for this global forum.
Yes, we also thank you very much for joining us. Just a question going back to Cynthia, and then we will continue with questions that you may have. UV light regarding disinfection. What would you say about that, Cynthia?
So UV lights are very effective, but what you need to understand and realize is UV lights let off radiation. They let off an enormous amount of radiation. So when you look at UV lights, you need to read the instructions. Most UV lights, if they run for 30 minutes and they'll tell you what square footage they will disinfect, if it runs for 30 minutes, most of those have to have another 90 minutes to let the radiation dissipate. So you need to be very careful when you're using a UV light. If you're using a UV light, you cannot be anywhere in that space while that UV light is running. Most UV lights actually have a protection where if they sense a person, they will cut off by themselves. But even if it cuts off, the radiation is still there. So UV lights are good for something. If you go to a hotel room, you can put that UV light in there. You have to leave for at least, if it's going to run 30 minutes, you need to give it another 90 minutes. So you can put it in, go somewhere for 2 hours, and when you come back, your room is generally disinfected. This does not negate using wipes to wipe down surfaces, but it will disinfect the air. And I have a UV light in my house, and I use it. I used it regularly. I would cut it on before I would leave for work and every day because I knew I was going to be gone. The caution I cannot say enough is if you're using a UV light, please understand the radiation factor. I even have one that I use when I take to the gym. It goes into my locker where my gym bag is. But it sits in there for at least an hour. When I come out, then everything in my gym bag is disinfected. I can go ahead and go wherever I'm going. But like I said, the caution with the UV light, please, please, please do not subject yourself to radiation. If you subject yourself to radiation, you're giving COVID a means to come in.
In addition to that, can you talk to the effect of UV light on your eyes?
Yes, UV light will cause irreparable damage to your eyes. Please, 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 you do not want it. The damage it does to your lungs, to your organs, it's not something that happens immediately, but radiation is serious. You think about cancer patients that has radiation, it burns you from the inside out. Radiation in and of itself is very dangerous. So if you're going to use a UV light, and I'm not saying don't use it, it's very effective in what it does. You must follow the instructions. It's like using a needle. It's no good for you to use a needle if you don't know how to use it and you put it in the wrong space. If a needle's supposed to go in your muscle and you put it in your vein, you've just caused irreparable damage. If you're going to use it, please use it correctly, or you are negating the purpose.
Thank you. Dr. Burnett, and anyone else who can add to this two-part question, what is herd immunity, and is it against HIPAA for a leader to ask if a parishioner has been vaccinated?
I'm going to take the last one first. I have repeatedly said we need to be very cautious about what questions we are asking of anyone, your neighbor, your parishioner, whoever. We should not be announcing that someone has COVID unless they've asked for public prayer. Clergy need to be cognizant of the fact, and it's not against HIPAA because HIPAA does not apply outside of the medical setting. It is just what is morally right. And what is morally right is to not, if I'm coming to my pastor for prayer and I have not said, put my name on the sick and shut-in list, it should not go on the sick and shut-in list. In addition to that, whether a person has taken the vaccine or not taken the vaccine is a personal decision and may or may not be anybody else's business. So no, don't ask. It is not HIPAA related. It is a moral privacy issue. HIPAA denotes health. That's what the H stands for. So we should be using similar guidelines, but it is not legally mandated. I forgot the first question.
What is herd immunity? Herd immunity.
Dr. Fuller, take that one.
Sure. So herd immunity is when we have enough people in a population or community that either are naturally immune because they've had the disease or have gotten the vaccine to make them immune to infection. Now, we don't know that these vaccines block infection, but we do know they block disease such that, and that needs to be somewhere between 70 and 85 to 90% of the people, such that anybody who's not vaccinated will be protected. So I like to think of it as if you imagine a herd of animals, a herd of cattle, and you want to protect the baby cattle or calf in the middle, the people around it have to surround it with protection, which is what immunity does, such that nothing can get to that person or that, in this case, calf, who is not immune. So we want to get to herd immunity. There were thoughts earlier, could we do it just by letting people get the disease, right? And people survive. Well, because there's so much long-term effect of disease, even if you have a mild symptom, and also so much hospitalization and deaths when people get COVID, that is just not a viable strategy for COVID. So now we have the vaccines that can help us get to herd immunity.
Thank you.
But we have to take them.
Okay.
We have to have high uptake, yes.
And I just want to add to that, if you think Dr. Fuller said we're looking at anywhere from 70 to 90% of the population, and the last statistic is that only 6% of the United States population has been immunized, which, brings the question about access to getting the vaccines. And what I want to advocate for, especially in Black and Brown communities, and especially being faith-based, our churches can play important roles in getting the education out to our communities to dispel some of the myths out there around the vaccine and present the facts so we can make an informed decision on whether or not to get vaccinated. The churches I know in New York State, they have formed a registry for faith-based institutions. They have also said, in addition to the pharmacies, that some of the federally qualified health centers, which a majority of those federally qualified health centers are in our communities, now will be given the ability to distribute vaccines. But if you're thinking about the role for the church, we can take the side of education to come against vaccine hesitancy, but also some of us have large parking lots, and some of the states around the countries are asking churches to register if you believe that your facility can be used as a vaccine distribution site. So this is a great time for the church to really take a major role in getting information and access to our Black and Brown communities, because we know when we hear and look at the statistics that we are being impacted, and it has been already explained over CNN and all the major news outlets that right now the vaccine distribution is proportionately more in white communities than Black and Brown communities. So we have a major role to play as faith-based institutions to really begin to address the inequity in the vaccine distribution.
We're
Let me
told
add
that it's
to that.
10,
I'm
we're
sorry.
told that it's 10-1 of Black and Brown people to people, other people. And so we need to reverse that. The way I describe it is the train has left the station, the train being the train with the vaccines. And that is going to reduce the disease for those people who get the vaccine. We don't want, as people of color, whether you're in the US or elsewhere, to be left standing on the platform at the train station waiting for another train to come, because the train is already barreling down the track. And so we don't want to look up in September or October or this year next time and have most of the coronavirus or COVID illness and death in communities that are Black and Brown because we didn't get the vaccine because of whatever reasons. And even when people put them in our community, often others who are a little bit more tech savvy go in and take the appointments before auntie or grandmother or somebody can do that. So churches and community organizations can be proactive in helping people to register, get them connected for an appointment, keep at it, and then take them there and be with them while they go through the process, so that we're not left standing on the train platform waiting for some help. It's here. Let's take advantage of it.
Before we started, the very first thing I did was I added 2 SurveyMonkey tools. The first one is to sign up to be a vaccine distribution site wherever it is that you are. That tool will help us to be able to either feed into other agencies that are looking for sites, or it will also help us to be able to, in a coalition that we have become a part of, be able to be distribution sites ourselves. In addition, the second SurveyMonkey tool is one that asks for all of our healthcare providers, those who are able to give vaccines and not, because there's an admin piece that has to happen, to be able to sign up so that we will have a cadre, let's call it an army of folk who can administer the vaccine. In the US, FEMA is asking for our help, but we need to know who we are. I sit on the World Council of Churches COVID response team for the National Council of Churches USA. That body has also begun to do the same thing in partnership with the World Health Organization. But we need to know who we are. Who's got the property that will allow us to do the distribution sites? Who are the people who are certified? Or did your certification lapse and we just need to get you recertified? We can do that, but we need to know who you are. We need to know who's willing to do it.
And one of the things I want to stress with this is a lot of pastors that I have focused on are talking about that they don't want to register as a site because they don't want to utilize their buildings. But I just want to remind that there are mobile units out there. So we may never have to enter the church building, but if you have a lot where the mobile unit can come and park, you can also register to have your church as a site. So there are various ways we can participate, and the information is there, and we just need to access it and begin to really advocate for our communities.
Also, there is now federal money for churches that want to be used as vaccination sites. They come in and do the COVID cleaning correctly, and they come in beforehand and they come in afterwards. There is federal money if your facility, and that's a good way for you to get that initial COVID cleaning that costs at a minimum $5,000. So that's something to think about also. There is federal money for COVID cleaning for churches that want to be used as vaccination sites.
And we are a part of the coalition that can make that happen. But again, unless we know you exist, we cannot tie you to those funds.
And also, this can be an ecumenical effort. The church that I pastor, Calvary Fellowship, we actually reached out to the United Jewish Association because we heard through the grapevine that they were receiving fundings for churches to participate with education against vaccine hesitancy or assisting with vaccine appointments for seniors. So now it's the time for us to think ecumenically, because this is a global virus. It's no respecter of person, faith, denomination, race, gender, the list goes on and on. So also look at the other interfaith councils in your community, because as you know, some of them may get access to the funding quicker than us. But once you I partnered Calvary with them, and now we have a grant opportunity. So think ecumenically, think outside of AME and form the necessary. A lot of synagogues are in the same communities as churches, as mosques, so as temples, and we can all come together, pool our resources, and really address this issue.
Thank you so much. This conversation has really helped us to address health equity, and we want to talk a little bit more about social determinants of health in a moment. However, there is a question from our viewer, and Dr. Fuller, should we be tested for antibodies before taking the vaccine? The viewer asks, I am hearing that the presence of antibodies may be a reason for adverse reaction to the vaccine.
Yes, that's a very great question. What we know is that people who have had COVID, when they get the vaccine, may have more side effects, and that's probably because they do have antibodies already. But as I understand, there's not a recommendation that people get tested for antibodies. It's just that you end up that you know that you've been out from the COVID symptoms for 14 days or more. I have people in workshops that I do who have had COVID and have gotten the vaccine. And yes, they say their effects are more than someone who didn't, but that's because the immune system, which is wonderfully and fearfully made, is recognizing, okay, I'm already boosted against this. I'm going to even boost higher when I see the spike protein. And that means your system is working well. So there's no need to get tested. Just make sure you're past the last symptoms at least 14 days before, and that you realize, I think that I can deal with things as long as I know what to expect. And so we've told you that there are side effects. There can be arm soreness, fevers, chills, headaches, body aches, fatigue. That does and can happen for 2 to 3 days after the inoculation. But after that, you are then mounting your immune system. You may feel a little tired for a bit. I did. But know that that's part of the body's revving itself up to now have the memory and the protection you need to be safe. So no, you don't have to get tested for antibodies.
Thank you so much. So Dr. Burnett, social determinants of health. What does that mean?
You're muted.
There are many things that influence and impact our health and our response to health. And the main one is policies and procedures. It's that thing that drives everything else. Policies and procedures regarding insurance, regarding who's got access, when they've got access. But then there are other things. There have been studies that say that people that are constantly attacked by violence or see violence are there's some DNA changes that may or may not be happening. So that's a part of our social environment that we see. Education, whether or not we understand what's being said to us. There's a difference between literacy of I can pick up a book on the cow jumped over the moon versus picking up a piece of paper that is completely written in medical terminology and being able to understand it. So we have health literacy issues. We have education issues that impact our ability to either get jobs ourselves or create jobs. And so there's an economic factor. So social determinants of health is a list that's probably 100-fold regarding those things that impact our health. And that's a session unto itself. That impact our health in ways that we don't even think about. The World Health Organization, the Healthy People 20, well, it started with 2000, and every 10 years it's reevaluated. So now we're at Healthy People 2030. That list continues to grow. It changes country to country, whether you're rural, urban, or suburban, what impacts your health. But this thinking outside of I can just pick myself up and go to the doctor. What else is impacting your ability to respond, your ability to even go, and your ability to do anything else? It changes country to country.
Thank you so much for that. So we're almost at our 30-minute that we're going to have for questions and answers, but there's 3 more questions that we will entertain, and anyone who wants to address these 3 questions, we're going to combine them, then we can break them up, and certainly we will close in prayer and give our thanks to everyone. The first one would be, do I have to double mask? The second one would be, will the vaccine alter or change my DNA? And the third one, what about autoimmunity? Who would like to address any one of those 3? Or
I can start. Double masking is recommended now because one mask has between 40 and 70%, depending on the kind of mask, or maybe nothing if it's just a little, I forget what they're called, but that cover your mouth and neck, very little protection. So what I'm understanding is that a surgical mask underneath with a tight-fitting cloth mask over gives the best protection. And that is particularly important now that we have more easily communicated or transmitted variants that are circulating. And those variants are in the US. The second question about changing DNA, no, these vaccines don't even get anywhere near our DNA. I know there are videos out there that show 2-headed kids and 7-toed people. That's totally ridiculous. No, there's no effect on the DNA. The messenger RNA doesn't even get to the nucleus. It doesn't last long. It's not getting in our DNA. All of that is myth and misinformation. And then in terms of autoimmunity, I'll be honest, that's the one question that I don't know the answer to, and I don't think anybody does. That's what I'm most concerned about with the long-term effects of the vaccine, particularly if we are constantly seeing the virus antigen. There are some studies that show that with the virus infection, that autoimmunity or what they call rogue antibodies are what are responsible for the multiple symptoms that we see. But that's with the vaccine infection. There is no data that we know of that the vaccine itself, which isn't even the virus, it's just that little thumb, leads to autoimmunity. Saying that though, we're putting this into millions of people, billions of people worldwide. And so we don't know what will happen. And so my prayer when I went was to say, Lord, I'm going to step out on faith with the things that are known, and the things that are unknown, I'm going to ask you to protect me from. And so autoimmunity, in my opinion, would be one of those things, one of the unknowns.
Also, you need to remember when you're talking about double masking, you are, as Dr. Fuller said, talking about the surgical mask and putting a cloth mask over it. You do not want to put a cloth mask over a true N95. Some people that have access to N95s, you are negating the purpose. You're not only negating the purpose, you're going to end up hurting yourself, because that N95 needs to have a breathing through it. It is triple layered. I think some of them are 5 layered, but the purpose of the N95 is to give you the most protection in and of itself. You're supposed to, if you're going to double mask, it is the surgical mask and the cloth mask over it. We talked about earlier wearing the surgical mask correctly, wearing the, I forgot what you call them, that you put over your face. If you're not getting total protection and it's to your face here, if it's open at the bottom, if it's gapped at the side, you're not getting any protection at all. So wearing that piece of cloth because you don't like the way a mask feels, it's not giving you protection at all. Wearing it under your nose is not giving you protection. Definitely wearing it under your chin is not giving you protection, just having it on. But please, if you're going to double mask, do not do it with the N95. You are defeating the whole purpose of using it.
One quick comment, there are also bridges now that you can get to go under your mask, which go over your mouth and nose, that allow you to breathe easier. It keeps the mask a little bit away from your face and nose, particularly those people who are working all day in masks. You can get these you can order them for like 5 for $12 or something, in the US at least.
All right. I think it's also important that people know that there are different types and sizes of masks. Some people are not comfortable in masks because your mask is literally too small, where it is holding on for dear life, and it's a kitty mask almost. So try different masks. Different masks have different feels. Even in N95s, they are made differently. In the hospital, we've had different ones that come. Some, oh, this person likes it better, others don't. Some didn't fit behind the ear well if you had glasses. There were some who worked better because they were made if you wore glasses. So don't get stuck on just one type of mask or one fitting. Find the mask that fits best for you, that's going to fit tightly, that you're able to breathe in, that covers your nose and your mouth and doesn't come down when you're talking and this mask is constantly doing this. And just go through them and try them out. The same way you would do with shoes or clothes or anything like that, so that you can find the perfect fit for you.
Well, we would like to thank everyone for joining us today from all around the world. Certainly to the members of the International Health Commission, Reverend Dr. Miriam Burnett, our medical director, Reverend Dr. Lisa Williamson, the First Episcopal District Health Director, to the Reverend Dr. John DiMondi, the 19th Episcopal District Health Director, to the Reverend Dr. Oveta Fuller, our Associate Professor, University of Michigan Health Commission Science Advisor, Cynthia Taylor, Health Commission Chemist Advisor, and Dr. Owita Collins, the Health Commission Clinical Advisor and Hospitalist. On behalf of our chairman, Bishop Harry C. Wright, we thank all of you for offering the valuable, insightful information that was shared today, because as we know, our goal today was to make sure that the webinars and the information that we provide allow you, our viewers, to make an informed personal decision regarding all the topics we present, not just vaccinations, but all the topics presented. So again, that with prayer, you can make the personal decision that best fits your health. We thank Brother James and Brother O'Neill in the background for all of their hard work. You always have to have those who are in the background that work with us, and our health directors all around the world. You do an awesome job, awesome job. We could not do this without you. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let us bow our heads to close in prayer. Most dear gracious Heavenly Father, now, as all of us around the world continue to pray about what we will do regarding vaccinations and our personal health, we look unto you. For the scriptures have given us information to inform us, to know how powerful prayer is. So we look for you to speak to us, to guide us, and to continue to give us that wisdom. So again, those informed decisions can be made, and we, as a group of believers, faith-based believers, can be a part of stopping the spread of COVID-19. We thank you again for this opportunity to serve in the International Health Commission of the AME Church and the opportunity to serve in our various communities. We pray this prayer in the name of Jesus. Amen and amen.
Amen.
Have a wonderful day, a wonderful evening, whatever time it is for you. God bless you.